Ambassador Vega of the Xindi stepped into the United Nations conference room, her iridescent skin shimmering under Earth's artificial lights. She surveyed the assembled human diplomats with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. These creatures, so primitive in their mating practices, held the key to unlocking new genetic potential for her species. Craig Baker, the designated human liaison, stood to greet her. His heart raced as he extended his hand, acutely aware of the weight of his responsibilities. This wasn't just a diplomatic mission. It was a covert intelligence operation with far-reaching consequences for humanity's future. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Vega," Craig said, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "We're honored to host the Xindi delegation." Vega's multifaceted eyes focused on Craig's outstretched hand. She hesitated before grasping it, her cool, smooth skin contrasting with his warm, calloused palm. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through both of them. "Thank you, Mr. Baker," Vega replied, her voice a melodic hum. "I look forward to learning more about your unique customs." As they took their seats, the tension in the room was palpable. The year was 2045, and humanity stood at a crossroads. The arrival of the technologically superior Xindi had sparked heated debates across the globe. Some saw the aliens as harbingers of a new age of progress, while others feared subjugation or worse. Craig's superiors had made his mission clear: gather intelligence on Xindi biology and cultural practices, with a particular focus on their reproduction methods. It was a task that filled him with both excitement and dread. As the meeting progressed, Craig found himself drawn to Vega's otherworldly beauty and sharp intellect. He pushed the feelings aside, reminding himself of his duty to Earth. Yet when Vega requested a private audience to discuss human mating rituals, Craig couldn't refuse. In the privacy of a secure room, Vega's demeanor shifted. "Your species' approach to reproduction fascinates me," she admitted, leaning closer. "It seems so primitive, yet there's an intriguing intensity to it." Craig swallowed hard, caught off guard by her directness. "Well, I suppose it might seem that way from an advanced perspective," he replied, struggling to maintain his composure. "Perhaps I could explain our courtship rituals in more detail." Vega's eyes lit up with interest. "Yes, please do. In fact, I'd like to experience them firsthand. For research purposes, of course." As Craig began to outline the intricacies of human dating, he was unaware of the true nature of Vega's interest. Her superiors had tasked her with assessing human compatibility for a potential breeding program, one that could enhance Xindi genetics in ways they had never imagined. Outside the room, Earth's governments debated the risks and benefits of closer relations with the Xindi. Protests erupted in major cities, with some groups vehemently opposing any form of interspecies intimacy. Others called for unrestricted cultural exchange, seeing it as humanity's ticket to the stars. As the days passed, Craig found himself torn between his growing attraction to Vega and his loyalty to his own species. Each meeting, each shared meal, each innocent touch blurred the lines between duty and desire. Vega, too, found her initial repulsion to physical mating, giving way to a fascination with Craig's strength and charisma. Their superiors watched closely, pressuring them to gather more information, to push boundaries, to gain any advantage in this delicate dance of interstellar diplomacy. As Craig and Vega navigated their complex relationship, the fate of two species hung in the balance, hinging on the outcome of this unprecedented encounter between human and alien. The stage was set for a journey that would challenge perceptions, shatter taboos, and redefine the very meaning of intimacy across the cosmos. In the end, it would be up to Craig and Vega to bridge the gap between their worlds, one tentative step at a time. As the days passed, Craig found himself increasingly drawn to Vega, their interactions evolving from strictly professional to something more nuanced. The culmination of this shift came in the form of a formal dinner date, a diplomatic gesture that carried far more weight than either of them initially realized. The restaurant, a high-security establishment specially prepared for the occasion, buzzed with nervous energy. Human staff moved efficiently, their eyes darting occasionally to the exotic Xindi ambassador seated across from Craig. The menu, a carefully curated blend of Earth cuisine and Xindi dietary preferences, represented the delicate balance they were all trying to achieve. Craig watched as Vega examined her plate, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the soft lighting. "This is unusual," she said, her melodic voice tinged with uncertainty. "We Zindi typically consume nutrients in liquid form. The concept of solid food for pleasure is quite foreign to us." "Well, I hope you'll find it enjoyable," Craig replied, lifting his fork. "Humans have elevated eating to an art form. It's not just about sustenance, but also about shared experiences and cultural exchange." As they navigated the meal, Craig carefully observed Vega's reactions, noting each new discovery in her expressions. Her initial hesitation gave way to curiosity as she sampled different textures and flavors, her responses providing valuable insights into Zindi physiology and cultural norms. Midway through the main course, Vega reached for her water glass. Her hand accidentally brushed against Craig's, and both of them froze. The contact sent a jolt through Vega, her iridescent skin briefly pulsing with an intense glow. Craig felt it too, a spark of electricity that seemed to linger long after the touch had ended. I apologize," Vega said, her voice wavering slightly. "Physical contact is not common among my people. I wasn't prepared for the sensation." Craig saw an opportunity to gather more information. "Touch is an important part of human interaction," he explained, his heart racing. "From formal handshakes to friendly hugs, it's how we connect with each other. In more intimate relationships, touch becomes even more significant." Vega leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Craig's hands. "Fascinating. And this intimacy, how does it factor into your reproductive processes?" Before Craig could formulate a response, a commotion erupted outside the restaurant. The sound of angry voices and breaking glass shattered the carefully cultivated atmosphere. A server rushed to their table, his face pale with worry. "Mr. Baker, Ambassador Vega, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation developing outside. A group of protesters has gathered, and they're demanding the Zindi leave Earth immediately." Craig's training kicked in. He stood quickly, scanning the room for potential threats. "We need to get you to safety, Ambassador. Follow me." As they moved towards a secure exit, Craig's communication device buzzed. General Hawthorne's voice crackled through the speaker. "Baker, get Vega to the UN complex immediately. The situation is escalating across the city. A group called Humans First, led by Marcus Steele, is behind these protests. We're convening an emergency meeting with the Zindi delegation." The drive to the UN complex was tense, with Craig constantly checking for potential threats. Vega sat silently beside him, her earlier curiosity replaced by a wary alertness. As they arrived, they were immediately ushered into a conference room where human and Zindi officials were already engaged in heated discussions. Zorn, the senior Zindi ambassador, turned as they entered. "Vega, are you unharmed? These humans assured us of your safety, yet their streets are filled with those who would do us harm." General Hawthorne stepped forward, his face a mask of controlled anger. "Ambassador Zorn, I assure you we're taking this threat seriously. We're implementing additional security measures immediately." "Additional measures?" Zorn's multifaceted eyes flashed. "Perhaps limiting our movements would be more to your liking, confining us to designated areas under the guise of protection?" As the argument escalated, Craig found himself torn. He understood the general's concerns, but he also sympathized with Vega and her people's position. The weight of his dual role, both as a diplomat and an intelligence gatherer, pressed heavily upon him. Suddenly the door burst open, and Dr. Elena Rodriguez rushed in, clutching a tablet. "Excuse the interruption, but I have critical information regarding Zindi biology that may be relevant to our current situation." All eyes turned to the xenobiologist as she activated a holographic display. "My research has revealed that Zindi reproduction involves a complex exchange of genetic material through non-physical means. This explains their initial aversion to human mating practices and physical contact in general." Craig and Vega exchanged glances, both recalling their earlier accidental touch and its unexpected impact. The implications of this discovery were enormous, potentially reshaping the entire framework of human-Zindi relations. As the meeting continued, reports of escalating violence flooded in. Marcus Steele's followers were growing bolder, attacking known Sindhi gathering places and demanding their immediate departure from Earth. General Hawthorne pulled Craig aside. "Baker, I need you to escort Ambassador Vega to our secure facility outside the city. It's no longer safe for her here." Craig nodded, acutely aware of the responsibility being placed on his shoulders. As he led Vega to a waiting vehicle, he couldn't shake the feeling that their journey would be far more than just a security measure. It was a step into uncharted territory, both diplomatically and personally. As they drove away from the city, the glow of fires and the sound of sirens faded into the distance. Vega turned to Craig, her eyes reflecting the passing streetlights. "Your world is so full of contradiction, Craig. Such capacity for violence, yet also for protection and connection." Craig met her gaze, feeling the weight of unspoken possibilities between them. "Perhaps that's something our species have in common, Vega. We're both on a journey of discovery." The road stretched out before them, leading into an uncertain future where the boundaries between duty, diplomacy, and desire would be tested in ways neither of them could have imagined. Imagine. As the vehicle sped through the night, Craig's mind raced with possibilities. The secure facility loomed ahead, a fortress of steel and concrete nestled in the wilderness. It represented both safety and confinement, a haven from the chaos engulfing the cities, but also a cage that would limit their movements. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a team of stern-faced security personnel. Craig noticed Vega's posture stiffen as they were escorted through a series of heavy metal doors and down sterile corridors. The facility's harsh lighting cast an eerie glow on her iridescent skin. "This will be your quarters, Ambassador," a gruff officer announced, gesturing to a sparsely furnished room. "Mr. Baker, you'll be stationed next door. Dr. Rodriguez will arrive tomorrow to begin her research." As the door closed behind them, Craig turned to Vega. "I know it's not ideal, but you'll be safe here, I promise." Vega's multifaceted eyes scanned the room, her antenna twitching slightly. "Safe, yes, but at what cost? I feel like a specimen in one of your laboratories." Before Craig could respond, his communication device buzzed. General Hawthorne's face appeared on the screen, his expression grave. "Baker, we've got a situation. Dr. Rodriguez is en route with some high-tech equipment. I need you to oversee her research and ensure the ambassador's cooperation. We're counting on you to gather as much data as possible on Xindi biology. Understood?" Craig swallowed hard, acutely aware of Vega's presence just a few feet away. "Yes, sir, I'll do my best." The following morning, Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived in a flurry of activity. Her team quickly set up an array of sophisticated equipment in one of the facility's laboratories. Craig watched as Vega eyed the machines warily. "Don't worry," he assured her. "Dr. Rodriguez is the best in her field. She's here to help us understand each other better." Vega's antenna twitched skeptically. Understanding through dissection and analysis? How very human. As the days passed, Craig found himself torn between his duty and his growing concern for Vega's well-being. He observed the tests and examinations, wincing inwardly at Vega's discomfort during some of the more invasive procedures. One afternoon, as Dr. Rodriguez pored over a holographic display of Xindi genetic structures, her eyes widened. "This is incredible," she breathed. "There's an unexpected compatibility between human and Xindi DNA. The implications are staggering." Craig felt a mix of excitement and unease at this revelation. He knew immediately that this discovery would change everything. Sure enough, within hours, he received new orders from General Hawthorne. "Baker, we need more data on Xindi physical responses. I want you to initiate closer physical contact with the ambassador. Nothing too overt, but push the boundaries. We need to know if interspecies breeding is a possibility." Craig's stomach churned at the thought of manipulating Vega's trust. Yet he couldn't deny the significance of this research for humanity's future. Unbeknownst to Craig, Vega had received similar instructions from Ambassador Zorn. As they sat together in the facility's small recreation area that evening, an awkward tension hung in the air. "Vega," Craig began hesitantly, "I was wondering if you'd be open to learning more about human forms of physical interaction, purely for cultural exchange purposes, of course." Vega's antenna quivered, but she nodded slowly. "I suppose that would be informative." Gently, Craig reached out and took Vega's hand in his own. He felt her initial flinch at the contact, then a gradual relaxation. "This is called holding hands," he explained softly. "It's a gesture of affection and comfort among humans." Vega stared at their intertwined fingers, her skin pulsing with a soft glow. "It's not unpleasant," she admitted, "though quite different from Xindi practices." Over the next few days, Craig introduced Vega to other human gestures of affection, a hand on the shoulder, a brief hug. Each new touch seemed to both fascinate and frighten her. Craig couldn't help but notice the quickening of her pulse, the faint glow that suffused her skin at each contact. During one of their sessions, Vega suddenly pulled away. "Craig," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I must confess something. These physical sensations, they're overwhelming. Xindi reproduction is so different, sterile, detached. We combine genetic material in laboratories, without any direct contact. This way humans have of mating. It's terrifying. And yet—" Her words were cut short by a sudden alarm blaring through the facility. Craig's communication device crackled to life with an urgent message. "Baker, we've got intruders. Steele's people somehow breached our defenses. They're after the ambassador. Protect her at all costs." Craig's training kicked in instantly. He grabbed Vega's hand, pulling her towards a secure area of the facility. "Stay close to me," he ordered, his voice low and intense. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a group of armed intruders, led by a scarred man Craig recognized as Jack Harding, Steele's second-in-command. "Hand over the alien," Harding snarled, raising his weapon. In a blur of motion, Craig sprang into action. He disarmed the first attacker with a swift strike, using the man's own momentum to throw him into his comrades. Vega watched in awe as Craig moved with fluid grace, his body a weapon honed by years of training. The fight was brutal, but brief. Craig's superior skills and purpose overwhelmed the intruders. As the last attacker fell unconscious, Craig turned to check on Vega. He was caught off guard by the intensity of her gaze. "You protected me," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "The strength, the speed. I've never seen anything like it." Craig noticed a cut on his arm, a minor injury from the scuffle. Before he could respond, Vega reached out, her cool fingers gently touching the wound. The contact sent a jolt through both of them, more intense than anything they'd experienced before. In a moment of pure instinct, Vega leaned forward and pressed her lips against Craig's. The kiss was clumsy, unpracticed, but filled with an electric intensity that left them both breathless. As they pulled apart, staring at each other in shock and wonder, Craig's communication device buzzed urgently. A message from Xindi High Command, marked with the highest priority. The fate of their budding relationship, and possibly the future of human-Xindi relations, hung in the balance as Craig reached for the device, his hand still intertwined with Vega's. "Vega." Craig's hand trembled as he reached for the device, his mind blown from the unexpected kiss. He activated the message, and Ambassador Zorn's stern visage appeared on the screen. "Vega, we have new directives for you," Zorn announced, his multifaceted eyes glinting. "You are to engage in a series of controlled physical interactions with the human, Craig Baker. This includes simulated mating scenarios. We require data on human reproductive capabilities." Craig felt Vega stiffen beside him. Her antenna drooped, and a faint tremor ran through her body. "Ambassador Zorn, I don't understand. This goes against everything we've been taught about interspecies contact." Zorn's expression hardened. "Your personal comfort is irrelevant, Vega. This is a matter of utmost importance for Xindi High Command. You will comply." As the transmission ended, Craig turned to Vega. Her iridescent skin had dulled, and her eyes were wide with fear. "Vega, I won't let them force you into anything you're not comfortable with," he said softly. Before she could respond, Dr. Elena Rodriguez burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Craig, Vega, I have a proposition," she announced, brandishing a tablet. "My latest analysis shows unprecedented compatibility between human and Xindi DNA. I propose we take this a step further, a monitored physical coupling to study the potential for interspecies reproduction." Craig felt his jaw drop. Dr. Rodriguez, that's absolutely necessary. General Hawthorne's voice boomed from the doorway. He strode in, his eyes gleaming with barely concealed enthusiasm. This could give us a strategic advantage we've never dreamed of. Vega backed away, her antenna quivering. This is too much, she whispered. I can't. I won't be a laboratory specimen. Craig stepped between Vega and the others. We need time to process this, he said firmly. It's not a decision to be made lightly. General Hawthorne nodded reluctantly. Very well, but remember, Baker, this is bigger than your personal feelings. The fate of human-Xindi relations could hinge on this experiment. As they left, Craig turned to Vega. I'm sorry, he began, but she held up a hand to stop him. Craig, I need to be alone, she said, her voice trembling. Without another word, she retreated to her quarters. Over the next few days, tension permeated the facility. Craig and Vega avoided each other, their earlier closeness shattered by the weight of expectations placed upon them. Dr. Rodriguez continued her preparations, oblivious to the emotional turmoil surrounding her subjects. On the 5th day, alarms blared through the complex. Security breach, a voice shouted over the intercom. All personnel evacuate immediately. Craig sprinted to Vega's quarters, his heart pounding. He found her huddled in a corner, her eyes wide with fear. We have to go, he urged, extending his hand. Vega hesitated for a moment before taking it. As their skin touched, Craig felt a jolt of electricity pass between them. There was no time to dwell on it as they raced through the corridors. They rounded a corner and came face to face with Jack Harding and a group of armed men. But something was different this time. Among them stood several Xindi, their insectoid features twisted with disgust. Well, well, Harding sneered. The lovebirds trying to fly the coop. One of the Xindi stepped forward, his carapace gleaming under the harsh lights. I am Commander Crix, he announced. We are here to put an end to this abomination. Xindi and humans were never meant to intermingle. Craig's mind raced. How had Steele's people allied with a Xindi faction? He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the immediate threat. Vega, when I say run, head for the emergency exit, he whispered. Before he could act, Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. Craig, Vega, get to the underground facility immediately. It's our only chance. Taking advantage of the momentary distraction, Craig launched himself at Harding. His fist connected with the man's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. Run! He shouted to Vega. They sprinted down the hallway, the sound of gunfire erupting behind them. Craig felt a bullet graze his arm, but adrenaline dulled the pain. They reached a hidden elevator and tumbled inside. As they descended, Vega turned to Craig, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and dedication. Craig, I think I'm ready, she said softly. If we're going to face this threat, we need to understand each other fully, in every way. The elevator doors opened to reveal a state-of-the-art laboratory. Dr. Rodriguez was waiting, her face grim. We don't have much time, she said. The experiment needs to happen now. Craig looked at Vega, searching her face for any sign of doubt. Are you sure about this? Vega nodded, her antenna quivering slightly. Yes, for the sake of both our species, we must try. As alarms continued to blare above them, Craig and Vega followed Dr. Rodriguez into a private chamber. The walls were lined with sensors and monitoring equipment. Craig felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach as he realized the enormity of what they were about to do. We'll start with simple touch exercises, Dr. Rodriguez instructed. Craig, I want you to begin with a gentle massage. Vega, try to relax and focus on the sensations. Hesitantly, Craig placed his hands on Vega's shoulders. Her skin was cool and smooth beneath his fingers. As he began to knead gently, he felt her tense muscles gradually relax. That's not unpleasant, Vega murmured, her eyes half closed. As Craig continued the massage, he noticed a change in Vega's demeanor. Her breathing deepened, and a soft glow began to emanate from her skin. Suddenly, he felt a strange sensation in his mind, a flicker of emotion that wasn't his own. Vega's eyes snapped open. Craig, she gasped, I can feel what you're feeling. How is this possible? Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward, her eyes wide with excitement. Fascinating. It seems the physical contact has triggered some kind of psychic link. This could be a game changer in human-Xindi relations. Before they could explore this new development further, the facility shook with a massive explosion. Dust rained down from the ceiling as the lights flickered. "They're breaking through," Dr. Rodriguez shouted. "We need to complete the experiment now if we want any chance of understanding these new abilities." Craig looked at Vega, seeing his own mix of fear and tenacity reflected in her multifaceted eyes. "Together?" he asked softly. Vega nodded, reaching for him. "Together." As their bodies intertwined, Craig felt a surge of energy unlike anything he had ever experienced. Vega's thoughts and emotions flooded his mind, creating a feedback loop of sensation and feeling. The world around them seemed to fade away as they lost themselves in the intense connection. Suddenly, Craig felt a rush of power coursing through his veins. His senses sharpened, and he could hear the approaching footsteps of their attackers with crystal clarity. Beside him, Vega's skin glowed with an otherworldly light. They broke apart, gasping for breath. Dr. Rodriguez stared at them in awe. "Your vital signs, they're off the charts. It seems the melding of human and Xindi DNA has unlocked latent abilities in both of you." Before they could process this information, the door to the laboratory burst open. Harding and Crick stood in the doorway, weapons raised. "It's over," Harding snarled. "Time to end this freak show." Craig felt a surge of newfound strength as he stepped forward, Vega at his side. He could sense her thoughts, her perseverance matching his own. Whatever came next, they would face it together, not just as individuals, but as the first of something entirely new. As Harding's finger tightened on the trigger, Craig and Vega moved in perfect unison, their enhanced reflexes carrying them away from danger. But this time, their enhanced reflexes kicked in simultaneously. Craig's hand shot out, deflecting Harding's weapon as Vega's leg swept Crick's feet from under him. The room erupted into chaos. Bullets whizzed past them as Craig and Vega moved in perfect synchronization, their newfound abilities allowing them to perceive and react to threats with superhuman speed. Craig felt Vega's presence in his mind, a constant awareness of her movements and intentions. They flowed around each other, two parts of a single deadly machine. "Impossible," Harding growled, emptying his clip in their direction. Craig and Vega weaved through the gunfire, closing the distance. Craig's fist connected with Harding's jaw, sending him crashing into a bank of computers. Vega's antenna twitched as she sensed movement behind her, ducking just as Crick swung a Xindi energy weapon. The laboratory became a battleground. Alarms blared overhead as more of Steele's men and Crick's Xindi operatives poured into the room. Dr. Rodriguez frantically worked at a console, backing up data and securing samples. "Craig, Vega, we need to protect the research," she shouted over the din. They nodded in unison, understanding the importance of her work. As they fought, Craig noticed their movements becoming increasingly fluid and coordinated. He could anticipate Vega's actions before she made them, and she seemed to do the same for him. A Xindi operative lunged at Vega with a serrated blade. Craig felt a surge of protective instinct, coupled with a flash of Vega's own persistence. Without a word, Craig dropped low as Vega used his back as a springboard, launching herself feet first into the attacker's chest. The fight spilled out into the corridor. Security cameras swiveled to track the action, capturing footage of Craig and Vega's extraordinary abilities. In a nearby control room, technicians watched in awe as the human-Xindi pair moved with impossible speed and precision. "Are you seeing this?" one of them breathed, fingers flying over a keyboard. "Uploading to the secure server now." In her makeshift command center, Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened as she analyzed the incoming data. Graphs and charts flickered across her screens, showing unprecedented levels of neural activity and physical performance. "Incredible," she murmured, isolating a strange protein structure in their blood samples. "This could change everything." The battle raged on, with Craig and Vega steadily pushing back their attackers. Their enhanced senses allowed them to anticipate threats from all directions, turning the narrow corridors into a killing ground for their opponents. Suddenly, a new voice crackled over the facility's speakers. "This is General Hawthorne. All personnel, initiate Emergency Protocol Delta. Special forces are en route to secure the facility." Craig felt a mixture of relief and apprehension from Vega. Help was coming, but what would it mean for them? As if in answer to their unspoken question, a massive explosion rocked the building. Through a haze of dust and debris, a figure emerged, wielding a sleek Xindi weapon that hummed with energy. "Marcus Steele," Craig growled, recognizing the anti-Xindi zealot. Steele's eyes gleamed with fanatical hatred. "I will not allow this abomination to continue," he snarled, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, Commander Crix appeared behind him, his chitinous face unreadable. "I'm afraid I can't let you do that, Steele," he said coldly. In a flash, Crix activated a device on his wrist. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and Craig felt his enhanced senses overload. He stumbled, feeling Vega's consciousness slip away from his as they both collapsed to the ground. Through blurring vision, Craig saw figures swarming into the room. Steele and Crix were arguing, their words muffled and distant. More explosions shook the facility as what sounded like multiple groups engaged in firefights throughout the building. "Craig," Vega's weak voice reached him. He tried to move towards her, but his limbs felt like lead. A new group of armed individuals entered the fray, their uniforms unmarked. One of them spoke into a communication device. "Director Kane, we have visual on the targets, moving to extract." Craig's world spun as rough hands grabbed him, dragging him across the debris-strewn floor. He caught a glimpse of Vega being similarly manhandled by another group of operatives. "No," he tried to shout, but his voice came out as a weak rasp. As consciousness faded, Craig's last sight was of Dr. Rodriguez clutching a vial of cloudy liquid, her face a mask of commitment as she slipped away through a hidden panel in the wall. The world went dark, leaving Craig with a final chilling thought. Whatever happened next would change the course of human-Xindi relations forever. Craig's consciousness returned slowly, his mind struggling to piece together fragmented memories. The last thing he remembered was the chaos at the underground facility, Vega collapsing beside him, and rough hands dragging them away. As his eyes fluttered open, he found himself in a sterile white room, lying on a medical bed. "Vega!" he called out weakly, his throat dry and scratchy. "I'm here," came her familiar voice from nearby. Craig turned his head to see Vega on a similar bed, her antenna twitching as she regained awareness. Before they could say more, the door slid open with a soft hiss. A tall, slender figure entered, her features a striking blend of human and Xindi characteristics. She regarded them with keen interest, her multifaceted eyes gleaming with intelligence. "Welcome," she said, her voice carrying a slight alien inflection. "I am Dr. Lyra. You're safe now, and I have much to explain." As Craig and Vega listened, Dr. Lyra revealed the truth of their situation. They were in a hidden research facility on a remote island, run by a secret faction of human Xindi hybrids. The doctor explained how her group had been working for years to perfect the hybridization process, seeing it as the key to a better future for both species. "What you two have achieved naturally," Dr. Lyra said, gesturing to holographic displays of their genetic makeup, "is far beyond anything we've managed through artificial means. The level of integration is unprecedented." Craig felt a mix of fascination and unease as he watched the complex strands of DNA rotating in the air before him. "So what happens now?" he asked, glancing at Vega. Dr. Lyra's expression grew serious. "We need to study you further. Your enhanced abilities, the unique protein complex in your blood, they could be the key to unlocking our full potential as a hybrid species." Over the next few days, Craig and Vega underwent a battery of tests. They demonstrated their heightened reflexes, enhanced strength, and accelerated healing abilities for the awestruck hybrid scientists. But it was the deep psychic link between them that truly captivated Dr. Lyra and her team. During one session, Craig and Vega sat facing each other, electrodes attached to their temples. As they focused on their connection, the monitoring equipment lit up with activity. "Incredible," Dr. Lyra murmured, studying the readings. "The neural synchronization is off the charts. It's as if your minds are operating as one." Craig met Vega's eyes, feeling the familiar warmth of her consciousness brushing against his own. They didn't need words to communicate their mixed emotions, wonder at their new abilities, concern for the world they'd left behind, and a growing unease about their role in Dr. Lyra's plans. As the days passed, Dr. Lyra broached a delicate subject. "We believe that further intimate contact between you two could unlock even greater potential," she explained, her tone clinical, but her eyes gleaming with hardly restrained excitement. Craig felt a surge of indignation. "You want us to perform for you?" he asked incredulously. Dr. Lyra held up a placating hand. "I understand your reservations, but consider the implications. Your union could be the key to perfecting human-Xindi hybridization, to creating a new species that combines the best of both races." Vega's antenna twitched nervously. "And if we refuse?" The doctor's expression hardened slightly. "Then we'll be forced to explore other methods of studying your unique biology." The implied threat hung in the air as Craig and Vega exchanged troubled glances. They retreated to their shared quarters to discuss the proposal in private. "I don't like this," Craig said, pacing the room. "It feels wrong, being treated like lab rats." Vega nodded, her usually stoic features clouded with concern. "But if what they say is true, our cooperation could prevent a lot of suffering. Think of the conflict brewing back home." As they debated, their enhanced senses picked up snippets of conversation from beyond their room. Whispered words about global unrest, protests in major cities, and escalating tensions between humans and Xindi filtered through. Craig ran a hand through his hair, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "Maybe we can use this situation to our advantage," he mused. "If we go along with their tests, we might learn more about our abilities and find a way to help both our peoples." Vega reached out, taking his hand. The familiar spark of their connection flared to life, and Craig felt her persistence mingling with his own. "Together, then," she said softly. They informed Dr. Lyra of their decision, agreeing to participate in controlled intimate encounters under observation. The hybrid scientists prepared a special chamber, outfitted with advanced monitoring equipment to record every aspect of their interaction. As Craig and Vega entered the chamber for their first session, they felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. The clinical setting threatened to dampen the natural chemistry between them, but as soon as their skin touched, the world around them seemed to fade away. Their enhanced senses heightened every sensation as they came together. Craig marveled at the cool smoothness of Vega's skin, the subtle alien scent that was uniquely hers. He felt her consciousness merge with his own, creating a feedback loop of pleasure and connection that transcended the physical. As their intimacy deepened, something extraordinary began to happen. A soft glow emanated from their joined bodies, growing in intensity. Craig felt a tingling sensation spreading through his limbs, and he knew instinctively that Vega was experiencing the same thing. In the observation room, Dr. Lyra and her team watched in amazement as the monitors lit up with unprecedented readings. Energy levels spiked, neural patterns synchronized in complex ways, and the unique protein complex in their blood began to mutate and evolve. When it was over, Craig and Vega lay entwined, their bodies humming with residual energy. As they slowly disentangled themselves, Craig noticed something odd. He raised his hand, concentrating, and watched in astonishment as his fingers elongated slightly before returning to normal. Vega's eyes widened. "Craig, I think I can do it too." She focused, and her skin shimmered, taking on a more human-like texture before reverting to its natural state. Dr. Lyra burst into the room, her face alight with excitement. "Do you realize what this means?" she exclaimed. "You've developed the ability to manipulate your own cellular structure. The implications are staggering." As the hybrid scientists swarmed around them, taking samples and running scans, Craig and Vega shared a private look. They had unlocked a new level of their transformation, one that could have far-reaching consequences for both their species. But even as they marveled at their new abilities, a sense of unease grew within them. They could feel something stirring, a greater purpose behind their union that they couldn't yet fully comprehend. And beyond the walls of their island sanctuary, they knew the world was changing, tensions rising and forces moving that would soon draw them back into the conflict they had tried to escape. In the coming days, they would face new challenges and discoveries, each intimate encounter bringing them closer to understanding the true extent of their transformation. But for now, as they rested in each other's arms, Craig and Vega could only wonder what the future held for them and for the fate of human-Xindi relations. As Craig and Vega rested in each other's arms, their bodies still tingling from their recent intimate encounter, they felt a subtle shift in their physiology. Craig noticed his skin taking on a faint iridescent sheen, reminiscent of Vega's exoskeleton. Vega, in turn, felt her antennae becoming more sensitive, picking up minute vibrations in the air. "Craig," Vega whispered, her voice filled with wonder, "I think we're changing again." He nodded, running his fingers along her arm. "I feel it too. It's like our bodies are merging somehow." Dr. Lyra burst into the room, her eyes wide with excitement. "The readings we're getting are off the charts. Your cellular structures are exhibiting properties of both human and Xindi biology at an unprecedented level." Over the next few days, Craig and Vega underwent a series of tests that pushed the boundaries of their new abilities. They discovered they could adapt rapidly to various environmental conditions. Craig's lungs efficiently processed the high carbon dioxide atmosphere of a sealed chamber, while Vega's body adjusted its temperature to withstand extreme cold. During one particularly intense session, Craig placed his hand on Vega's temple, and suddenly he was transported into her memories. He saw flashes of her childhood on the Xindi homeworld, the towering crystal spires of her city, the warmth of her parents' embrace, the excitement of her first spaceflight. "This is incredible," Craig gasped as the vision faded. "I could see your past, feel your emotions." Vega nodded, her antenna quivering with excitement. "Let me try." As she touched Craig's face, she experienced his memories, the green fields of his family's farm, the thrill of his first combat training, the pain of losing comrades in battle. Dr. Lyra observed their exchange with fascination. "Your neural pathways are synchronizing in ways we've never seen before. This could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies communication." As Craig and Vega continued to explore their newfound abilities, they noticed a strange energy emanating from their bodies when they touched. The hybrid scientists' instruments detected this energy, which seemed to have healing properties. In one experiment, a small cut on Dr. Lyra's hand closed almost instantly when exposed to this energy field. However, their peaceful exploration was abruptly interrupted one evening when alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Lyra rushed into their room, her face etched with concern. "We've detected an approaching strike team," she explained hurriedly. "Our defense systems are holding them off for now, but it won't last long." Craig and Vega exchanged a knowing look. They had sensed the impending danger, a prickle of awareness at the edge of their consciousness. "Let us confront them," Craig suggested. "Our abilities give us the best chance of resolving this peacefully." Dr. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "You're right. But be careful. We don't know what kind of weapons they might have." As Craig and Vega prepared to face the intruders, they received disturbing news from the outside world. Reports flooded in of global unrest, with protests erupting in major cities worldwide. General Hawthorne had implemented a plan to round up all known Xindi on Earth, including those in human-Xindi relationships. "This is madness," Vega said, her antenna drooping with distress. "They're only going to escalate the conflict." Their concerns deepened when they learned of Ambassador Zorn's response, severing diplomatic ties with Earth and ordering all Xindi to prepare for immediate evacuation. The situation was spiraling out of control faster than they had anticipated. As they made their way to the facility's perimeter, Craig and Vega sensed the approach of Kane's strike team. They could feel the perseverance and fear emanating from the soldiers, along with a strange energy signature from their weapons. "They've got some kind of experimental tech," Craig warned. "We need to be careful." The first wave of Kane's team breached the outer defenses, and Craig and Vega sprang into action. Moving with superhuman speed and grace, they engaged the soldiers without causing harm. Craig's enhanced strength allowed him to disarm attackers with ease, while Vega's agility made her nearly impossible to hit. As they fought, they discovered new aspects of their abilities. Craig found he could project a localized energy field that short-circuited the soldiers' advanced weapons. Vega developed a form of short-range telepathy, anticipating their opponent's moves before they made them. The battle reached a crescendo as Director Kane himself entered the fray, wielding a massive energy cannon. "Stand down!" he roared. "You're coming with us, whether you like it or not." Craig and Vega stood their ground, hands clasped, their combined energy field pulsing visibly around them. "We're not your enemies, Director," Craig called out. "We might be the only chance for peace between our species." Before Kane could respond, a deafening roar filled the air. All eyes turned skyward as a massive Xindi warship materialized in the atmosphere above them. The ship's imposing silhouette blotted out the stars, its weapon systems glowing with awe-inspiring energy. In that moment of shocked silence, Craig and Vega knew that the fate of both their species hung in the balance. They had to act fast to prevent the situation from escalating into all-out war. "We need to reach out to both sides," Vega said urgently. "Use our connection to broadcast a message of unity." Craig nodded, closing his eyes and focusing on their shared consciousness. As they concentrated, their energy field expanded, enveloping friend and foe alike. In the minds of everyone present, human, Xindi, and hybrid, they projected a vision of a peaceful future where both species coexisted and thrived together. The effect was immediate and profound. The fighting stopped as both Kane's forces and Dr. Lyra's team lowered their weapons, staring in awe at Craig and Vega. But their work was nowhere near the end. As reports came in of Marcus Steele's attacks on Xindi evacuation points and Commander Crix's sabotage of off-world colonies, Craig and Vega realized the true scale of the crisis they faced. "We need to take our message to a global scale," Craig said, his voice filled with perseverance. "It's the only way to cut through the fear and mistrust." As they prepared to broadcast their telepathic message of unity to both humans and Xindi across the planet, Craig and Vega knew they were about to change the course of history. The next few hours would determine not just their fate, but the future of interstellar relations. With the Xindi warship looming overhead and chaos engulfing the globe, Craig and Vega stood united, ready to bridge the gap between their species and avert the impending conflict. The true test of their newfound abilities and their bond was about to begin. The true test of their newfound abilities and their bond was about to unfold on a global scale. Craig and Vega exchanged a determined look, their fingers intertwining as they prepared for their most ambitious feat yet. They made their way to the highest point of the island facility, their footsteps echoing in the tense silence that had fallen over the area. The Xindi warship loomed overhead, its massive form casting an ominous shadow across the landscape. As they reached the summit, Craig felt a surge of energy coursing through his body. He turned to Vega, noticing the faint shimmer of her exoskeleton in the moonlight. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Vega's antennae quivered with anticipation. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, her voice steady despite the weight of their task. They positioned themselves at the edge of the rooftop, hands clasped tightly. Craig took a deep breath, focusing on the connection he shared with Vega. As they concentrated, a shimmering field of energy began to form around them, growing in intensity until it was visible for miles around. The air crackled with power as their telepathic broadcast reached out across the globe and into space. It wasn't just a message of words, but a vivid transmission of sensations and emotions. Humans and Xindi alike found their minds touched by the broadcast, experiencing the profound connection Craig and Vega shared. In New York, a human businessman stumbled mid-step as he was suddenly overwhelmed by the sensation of Vega's initial fear upon her first intimate encounter with Craig. The fear gave way to wonder, and he found himself looking at his Xindi colleagues with new eyes. Aboard a Xindi research station orbiting Mars, a scientist gasped as she felt the depth of human passion course through her. The evolutionary advantages of physical mating became clear to her in a way no textbook could have conveyed. As the broadcast intensified, it triggered a chain reaction among other human Xindi couples worldwide. In a small apartment in Tokyo, a human woman and her Xindi partner, who had been hiding their relationship, felt a sudden awakening of latent abilities. They reached out to each other, their minds connecting in a way they never had before. A network of hybrid consciousness began to form, amplifying Craig and Vega's message. The broadcast grew stronger, reaching further into space and deeper into the hearts and minds of both species. In Earth's atmosphere, Commander Crix's invasion fleet faced off against a hastily assembled human defense force. Fingers hovered over triggers, tension thick in the air. Just as the first shots were about to be fired, the hybrid broadcast reached its peak. Human pilots found themselves overwhelmed by a wave of empathy, suddenly understanding the complex hierarchy and sense of duty that drove the Xindi. Xindi gunners hesitated, their minds flooded with human concepts of individual freedom and the drive for self-dedication. On the ground, Marcus Steele led his anti-Xindi forces in a final assault on a Xindi evacuation point. His face set in stubborn persistence, he raised his arm to signal the charge. But as the broadcast hit, he faltered mid-step. His mind was suddenly filled with alien perspectives. The beauty of Xindi art, the depth of their familial bonds, the richness of their culture. Steele's followers, similarly affected, began to question their actions. Weapons lowered slowly, confusion replacing the hatred that had driven them moments before. In orbit, Ambassador Zorn stood rigid on the bridge of the Xindi command ship. As the broadcast washed over him, his eyes widened in astonishment. He felt the depth of human emotion, the passion, the creativity, the resilience. More than that, he saw the potential for true symbiosis between their species. With a voice that trembled slightly, Zorn gave an order that would change the course of history. Cease fire. Open a direct channel to Earth's leaders. It's time we talked. Back on the island, Director Kane's strike team found their minds open to new possibilities. One by one, they laid down their weapons. Kane himself stood motionless, touched by the broadcast. The potential for cooperation rather than control began to take root in his mind. As the broadcast reached its zenith, Craig and Vega's energy field pulsed with blinding intensity. The strain of their effort was evident on their faces, sweat beading on their brows as they channeled every ounce of their combined power into the message. Finally, as the last echoes of their broadcast faded, Craig and Vega collapsed to the rooftop, exhausted but triumphant. They lay there, breathing heavily, their hands still clasped tightly together. Dr. Lyra rushed to their side, her face a mix of concern and awe. "Are you all right?" she asked, helping them to sit up. Craig nodded weakly, managing a small smile. "We're okay," he said, looking at Vega. "Did it work?" Before Dr. Lyra could respond, a comm device on her belt crackled to life. Reports began flooding in from around the world. Conflicts halting, negotiations opening, people from both species reaching out to one another in understanding. Vega's antennae twitched as she processed the information. "We did it," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "We actually did it." As the sun began to rise on a new day, Craig and Vega stood together, overlooking the ocean. They had averted immediate disaster, but they knew the real work was just beginning. The path to true reconciliation and cooperation between humans and Xindi would be complex, filled with challenges and setbacks. But as they watched the first rays of sunlight glint off the waves, Craig and Vega felt a sense of hope. They had opened the door to a new future, one where fear and mistrust could be replaced by understanding and unity. Hand in hand, they turned back towards the facility, ready to face whatever came next. The world had changed overnight, and they knew they would play a crucial role in shaping what was to come.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.